My husband abandoned me just days before I was due to give birth, choosing to attend his sister's lavish wedding instead. I was devastated, feeling like he prioritized his family over the one we were building together. But I didn't stay silent. In the end, I exposed all of his sister's dirty secrets, uncovering her lies and hypocrisy, and completely destroyed her marriage. I took back my power and made it clear that no one could treat me that way. I woke up to a strange sound. The zipper of a suitcase slicing through the early morning silence made my heart sink into my stomach. The clock showed just past 5 a.m. As I blinked the sleep out of my eyes, I saw Brandon hunched over the bed, shoving his tailored suit, tie, and polished shoes into a bag. 7 months pregnant, I must have looked ridiculous trying to sit up so quickly. "What are you doing?" I croaked, my throat dry. He flinched like a kid caught stealing cookies. "Going to Savannah's wedding," he muttered, as if it was the most normal thing in the world. Something inside me cracked. Savannah, my sister-in-law, had always been the golden child, the center of the universe for my mother-in-law, Helen and Brandon. She could do no wrong. Temper tantrums, bad decisions, all forgiven, all excused. Now that she was marrying some rich Scottish guy, she wasn't just adored. She was idolized. Savannah was their princess. I was the afterthought. And now Brandon was leaving me behind, a day before my due date, to bask in her glory. I could feel humiliation burning under my skin. Brandon and I had been together for 7 years. At first, his closeness to his mom and sister had seemed sweet, almost boyish. But after our wedding, I realized they weren't just close. They were a unit. Helen, Savannah, and Brandon. Their own little exclusive club. I, with my modest marketing job and love of quiet, had never been truly welcomed in. Family dinners always had the same scene. The three of them whispering, giggling, throwing glances, dripping with silent judgment. I stayed silent. For Brandon. For our daughter, Sky, now 5 years old. After the day Helen tried to poison Sky against me, whispering that mommy's bad, I never left her alone with them again. And now Brandon was packing a suitcase like it was nothing. No explanations, no apologies, just short answers and guilty eyes. I looked at his back and felt something dark and heavy start to bubble inside me. He was choosing them. In my most vulnerable moment, he chose them. I struggled to my feet, my stomach heavy, my legs trembling. Every instinct screamed, "Stop him. Don't let him leave." But I knew, if someone decides to betray you, clinging only humiliates you more. So I stood there, silent, watching him zip the suitcase and walk out without even saying goodbye. Just the creak of the front door and Helen's shrill voice in the hallway. "Hurry up, son. You're already late." I stood in the middle of the empty bedroom, alone, with a small child sleeping in the next room and another about to be born. There was a hollow place inside me. But somewhere on the edge of that emptiness, something else stirred. Rage. The following days passed in a strange blur. Thomas barely spoke to me after what happened, but I didn't even care anymore. I was too busy preparing for the baby, and too busy calming my daughter Lily, who kept asking where her dad had gone and why he wasn't helping anymore. I knew deep down I was already mentally moving on, even though part of me still hurt. Still hoped he would realize the gravity of what he had done. But each day that he stayed silent, each hour that he chose his mother and sister's feelings over mine, something inside me hardened. I focused on Lily, on setting up the nursery, on gathering the final supplies I would need for labor. I leaned on my sister, who came by daily now, helping with everything I couldn't handle alone. Meanwhile, Thomas seemed to live in another world entirely, one that didn't include his pregnant wife and daughter. His mother and sister were constantly posting photos on social media. Lavish brunches, shopping sprees, giggling selfies. And Thomas was often right there in the background, laughing like he had nothing to worry about. It was a slap in the face every time I accidentally saw their faces online, flaunting their happiness while I sat at home counting the days until my water broke. To make things worse, my mother-in-law started leaving voicemails almost daily, guilt-tripping me for not baking the pie, for ruining their precious family dinner, for making Thomas look bad. Not a single word about the baby. Not a single question about how I was feeling. Just endless complaints and venom. I stopped listening after the third message. My blood pressure was already high enough. I deleted her number from my phone, then my sister-in-law's, then eventually even Thomas's mother's entire side of the family. I realized I had been trying to fit into a family that never wanted me in the first place. I realized I was done begging for scraps of respect. One evening, Lily found me crying silently in the kitchen. She ran up and wrapped her little arms around me. "Mommy, when the baby comes, I'll help you. We don't need anyone else," she said, her tiny voice full of conviction. I hugged her so tight it hurt. In that moment, I knew I had already made my decision. Thomas could either step up and be the man I married, or he could stay with his toxic family. But either way, I would never let them hurt my children again. Not now, not ever. It was the night before my due date when everything finally snapped. Thomas came home late, smelling like expensive wine and heavy cologne, the kind his sister's new husband probably wore. He stumbled into the living room, dropping his keys on the floor with a loud clatter. And when he saw me standing there, swollen, exhausted, barely able to stay on my feet, he simply shrugged and mumbled something about me being too emotional. I stared at him in disbelief, the realization sinking in fully for the first time. This man wasn't my partner anymore. He wasn't my support system. He was just another problem to survive. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I just turned and went upstairs, closing the bedroom door quietly behind me. I knew I couldn't rely on him for the birth. I knew I couldn't rely on him for anything. I called my sister and asked her to stay with me through the weekend. She agreed without hesitation, promising to pack a bag and be at my place by morning. Lying in bed that night, feeling the baby kicking softly inside me, I made a vow to myself. I would not let Thomas, his family, or anyone else dictate the way I brought my child into the world. I would do it on my own terms, with the people who truly loved me. Early the next morning, Thomas was gone again. No note, no call, just gone. My sister arrived around noon, arms full of snacks, magazines, and a calm, grounding presence I didn't realize how badly I needed. We spent the afternoon organizing the nursery and playing with Lily, pretending everything was fine. But in the back of my mind, I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. I knew Thomas was supposed to fly out that evening for the second leg of his sister's wedding festivities. A ridiculous post-wedding honeymoon tour around Scotland that his sister insisted the whole family join. I wondered if he would even bother telling me goodbye before he left. He didn't. Around 7 p.m., my sister found me sitting on the couch, staring blankly at my phone. No texts, no calls, nothing, just silence. It was a silence I was beginning to understand very well. A silence that said, "You're not important. You're an afterthought." My sister wrapped a blanket around my shoulders, pulled Lily into her lap, and we sat there together in the fading light, a little broken, a little angry, but mostly just tired. So incredibly tired of being the ones who always stayed, who always cared, while everyone else walked away. I realized that night that Thomas's absence wasn't the tragedy I once feared. It was a gift. A brutal, painful gift that stripped away every last illusion I had left about him. And once illusions are gone, there's nothing left to hold on to but the truth. The next few days blurred together in a haze of contractions, hospital monitors, and exhaustion. My sister never left my side. She held my hand through every wave of pain, soothed Lily when she got scared, coordinated with the nurses, and made sure I always had water and ice chips within reach. Thomas never called. Not once. Not even a single message asking if I was alive. And somehow that silence hurt less than I thought it would. In a twisted way, it made things simpler. It confirmed that I was on my own. And oddly, it made me stronger. I delivered a beautiful baby boy early on a rainy Wednesday morning. He was small but healthy, his tiny cries slicing through the sterile air like the sweetest music I'd ever heard. I named him Jacob. I didn't even hesitate when the nurse asked. I had chosen that name months ago, back when I still thought Thomas would be there to help me decide. I cradled Jacob against my chest, feeling an overwhelming wave of love and protectiveness wash over me, stronger than anything I'd ever experienced. He was mine. Mine to love, mine to protect, mine to raise without lies and betrayals hanging over his head. My parents arrived later that day, bringing balloons, stuffed animals, and enough food to feed an army. Their faces lit up with joy when they saw Jacob, and Lily danced around the hospital room, proudly announcing to every nurse and doctor that she was a big sister now. It should have been one of the happiest days of my life. And in some ways, it was. But there was still an ache in my chest every time I glanced at the door, half expecting Thomas to come rushing in, breathless and apologetic, ready to be a part of this new chapter. He never did, and deep down, I knew he never would. That night, while my sister rocked Jacob to sleep and Lily snoozed curled up beside me, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything that had led me here, about how easily Thomas had chosen his sister's party over his own son's birth, about how little it had taken for him to turn his back on us, and about how much I had tolerated in the name of love, loyalty, and family. Never again. I wasn't going to waste another second hoping Thomas would change. I wasn't going to wait for apologies that would never come. I had my children. I had my family. I had myself. That was more than enough. It had to be, because the next step wasn't just surviving without him. It was taking back my life completely, and that was a promise I intended to keep. When I finally got home from the hospital, everything felt different. The house was colder, emptier, but somehow it felt more like mine. My parents stayed with me for a few days, helping set up Jacob's crib, stocking the fridge, making sure Lily didn't feel left out in the chaos of newborn life. I was grateful for them more than words could express. Meanwhile, Thomas kept trying to call. I let every call go to voicemail. His messages ranged from apologetic to angry to desperate, like he couldn't decide which mask to wear. I didn't answer a single one. I needed time to think, to heal, to breathe without his chaos weighing me down. Then, one evening, my phone buzzed with a message from someone unexpected. Daniel, my former brother-in-law. He introduced himself politely, said he hoped he wasn't overstepping, but he wanted to talk. Curiosity got the better of me. I agreed to a call later that night, once both kids were asleep. Daniel's voice was calm, almost too calm, but there was a tightness underneath it. He said he had suspected something was off with Emily, my sister-in-law, ever since they met, but he had brushed it aside because love makes you blind. Then he told me that after the wedding, small things didn't add up. Lies about her job, about her money, even about her education. After he found out Emily had been siphoning money from his accounts to secretly send back to her mother and Andrew, everything clicked into place. He had been played, used, betrayed, just like me. I listened quietly as he talked, feeling a strange kinship with this man I barely knew. When he finished, I told him everything. How Emily and my mother-in-law had tricked me into baking for the wedding party. How they excluded me while parading around like royalty. How Thomas had abandoned me on the eve of giving birth. There was a long silence on the line. Then Daniel said with a sharp edge to his voice, "They don't deserve another ounce of loyalty from either of us." That night, we agreed on something unspoken. We were done being their pawns, done being polite, done covering for their lies. I didn't realize it at the time, but that conversation was the beginning of the end for Emily's perfect fairy tale marriage, and for Thomas's reputation too. I wasn't looking for revenge. I wasn't planning anything elaborate. I just wanted the truth to come out, and if that truth happened to burn their whole little empire of lies to the ground, so be it. The unraveling started faster than I could have ever predicted. Daniel didn't waste any time. Within a week, he had quietly started digging into Emily's background, asking questions, contacting people she had mentioned in her many glamorous stories. It didn't take long before the truth came out. She had never owned a restaurant. She had never even worked in one. Her so-called culinary school diploma was a fake, printed off some sketchy online service years ago. She wasn't a renowned chef, just a woman desperate for status who knew how to spin a convincing story. And she wasn't just lying about her achievements. She had been stealing. Thousands of dollars siphoned from Daniel's personal and business accounts. Money she funneled straight to her mother and to Andrew, who had conveniently downplayed his financial troubles whenever anyone asked. When Daniel confronted her, she cried, screamed, begged, everything but admitted the full truth. It didn't matter. He already had enough evidence. He packed her things while she sobbed on the floor and filed for divorce that same week. Meanwhile, Thomas must have sensed the ground shifting under him because he started calling more aggressively, leaving increasingly frantic messages about how much he missed me, how he could fix everything if I just forgave him. But I was already so far beyond caring. Every desperate voicemail, every pleading text just cemented how weak he really was. I wasn't angry anymore. I was disgusted. Word spread quickly through the family, and even further once Daniel's lawyer filed charges for theft and fraud against Emily. Suddenly, the golden children of the family, the ones who had always looked down on everyone else, were the center of a very public, very ugly scandal. And no amount of crocodile tears from Emily or fake apologies from Thomas could change that. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. Watching them scramble, watching their carefully crafted image shatter into pieces was more satisfying than any revenge plot I could have designed. I stayed quiet. I focused on Lily and Jacob, on building a life that had no room for liars, manipulators, or cowards. But inside, a part of me savored every second of their downfall. They had chosen their path. Now they had to walk it, alone. Thomas didn't stop. Even after Emily's lies exploded into full public disgrace, even after Daniel kicked her out and their divorce made headlines in their little social circle, Thomas kept reaching out. At first, it was pathetic apologies. Then it turned into anger, blaming me for everything. He said if I had just baked the stupid pie, none of this would have happened. That our family wouldn't be broken. I laughed when I heard the voicemail. Imagine thinking that your pregnant wife owes you a pie while you're planning to abandon her for a wedding. It would have been funny if it wasn't so pitiful. Meanwhile, Emily tried to do damage control with Daniel's family, spinning new tales about how she was the victim of manipulation by her evil sister-in-law. Meaning me. Of course, nobody bought it. Daniel's parents were furious, not just at Emily, but at Thomas too, for covering up her lies for so long. Word spread, and quickly, about how Thomas had prioritized his toxic mother and sister over his pregnant wife and their children. Even some of his old friends turned their backs on him. Karma worked faster than I ever could. Around the same time, the legal process started moving. Daniel's lawyers dug deeper into Emily's finances and found clear evidence of embezzlement. Emily tried to deny it, but there were too many paper trails she couldn't explain. The criminal charges became official. As for Thomas, he suddenly found himself very alone. He tried to mend fences with his extended family, but they saw right through him. At one point, he showed up at my sister's house uninvited, begging to see Lily and Jacob. My sister called the police immediately. That visit was the last straw for me. I officially filed for full custody of both children, citing abandonment and emotional neglect. My lawyer said the case was a slam dunk. Thomas didn't even bother contesting it. I had everything I needed: proof of his absence during my labor, hospital reports, police records, and endless streams of his pathetic texts. He didn't stand a chance. Watching him lose everything, not because I fought dirty, but because he destroyed it all himself, was the closure I didn't even know I needed. The day the custody papers were finalized felt like the true end of everything. I walked out of the courthouse with Lily holding my hand tightly and Jacob tucked in my arms, feeling lighter than I had in months. There were no dramatic goodbyes, no desperate last-minute pleas from Thomas. He wasn't even there. Maybe he realized that showing up would only make things worse. Maybe he knew he had already lost. Either way, it didn't matter anymore. My parents and my sister threw a small celebration that evening. A simple dinner at home, just the family that stood by me through everything. I looked around the table and realized this was what real love and loyalty looked like. Not the performative nonsense Thomas and his mother loved to put on, but real, steady, unshakable support. As I watched Lily laugh and feed tiny bites to her baby brother, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. The world outside could think whatever it wanted. Gossip would die down, people would move on. But inside these walls, we were safe. We were free. A few weeks later, I got a message from a distant cousin who still kept tabs on Thomas's side of the family. Apparently, Emily was sentenced to a short prison term for fraud, and their mother was facing eviction because without Thomas's income and Daniel's money, she couldn't afford her lifestyle anymore. Part of me expected to feel vindicated, triumphant even, but I didn't. I just felt done. Like their chapter in my life was finally closed. Thomas sent one last letter through his lawyer. No apology, no accountability. Just a pathetic plea to stay friends for the kids' sake. I didn't even bother responding. My kids would grow up surrounded by people who loved and respected them, not by people who used and betrayed their own family. Watching Lily play with Jacob, hearing her call me the best mommy ever, I knew I had made the right choice. I wasn't the villain they painted me to be. I was the survivor of their cruelty. I was the protector of my children. I was the woman who refused to be broken by their selfishness. And I would never, ever regret walking away from all of them. Not for a second. This was our new beginning, and I was finally free to live it.